Augie Cooter, Chapter 13, read by Mrs. Green. At 2:30 Friday afternoon, as the sweaty square dancers in Mr. Snolanowski's class pushed their desks back into place and got ready for dismissal, Donica Perfecto was sneaking out her back door, clutching the handle of a mini cooler containing several slices of American cheese. She had stuffed pillows under her covers in case her mother came into her room to check on her. Since she was afraid of running into anyone she knew, especially Dawn and Hannah, she'd left herself enough time to ride her bike the back way to the Wauwatosa bandshell. The weather was beautiful that day, sunny and warm, with none of the gusty winds from the previous day, which had blown the lids off garbage cans and sent all manner of things fluttering and scuttering around the neighborhood. Hannah and Dawn were standing on the corner, waiting for the light to change, when Augie Cooter came up behind them. Instead of ignoring him the way they usually would have, Dawn turned around and faced Augie. "Tell Hannah what you told me about Donica saying she had to go to my little sister's birthday party today." "That's what she said," Augie reported. "She told me the clown was sick." "How weird is that?" said Dawn. "Very," said Hannah. "She told us yesterday she was going straight home to bed because her appendix was about to explode. But you said her appendix was fine, right, Augie?" "Yippers," nodded Augie. "I think maybe it's time for us to go pay her a little visit," Dawn said. When the three of them reached Tullahoma Street, Hannah and Dawn crossed over to go to the Perfecto's house to confront Donica, while Augie continued on home. He knew Turk would be eagerly awaiting his afternoon walk. A few minutes later, Augie emerged from the house with Turk on his leash. As usual, Turk had a spitty yellow tennis ball in his mouth, and his tail was wagging like a flag. The afternoon walk was his favorite, because often Augie would take him to the park and throw the ball for him. Augie glanced across the street, but there was no sign of Hannah or Dawn. He considered going over there himself to tell Donica that the next time she wanted him to do her a favor, she didn't have to make up some crazy story to get him to do it. He was happy to help her in any way he could, especially now that she had invited him to come swimming in her pool. Turk started tugging on his leash so hard that Augie's shoulder felt like it was about to pop. Okay, I get the message," he said. "Here we go." On the corner, Turk stopped to inspect a large bush popular with the neighborhood dogs. While Turk nosed around in the branches, Augie turned back to look down the block at the Perfecto's house once more. This time, Hannah and Dawn were standing out on the sidewalk. They waved for him to come over to where they were. "Donica's disappeared," Hannah told him. "Disappeared?" said Augie. "Yeah, her mom is really worried. She said Donica was acting totally weird today." "Yeah, like she couldn't stop eating cheese. And now she's missing," said Dawn. Augie was about to explain that Donica might not have actually been eating the cheese. She might have been charving it, though he was still a little unclear about why she'd wanted to do that if she wasn't really planning to charve at a birthday party. But any thoughts about Donica Perfecto and cheese were suddenly lost as Augie looked down and noticed something that greatly alarmed him. The yellow tennis ball in Turk's mouth had turned a very bright shade of pink. At first, he was worried that Turk might have cut his mouth on something. But when he pulled the ball out, he discovered it wasn't a ball at all, but rather a crumpled up piece of pink paper. "He must have found it in the bushes," Augie said, relieved. Then something occurred to him. "You know what?" he said. "This paper looks like the exact same shade of pink as the flyer I saw that guy putting up on the bulletin board at school yesterday." "What guy?" Dawn asked. "What flyer?" asked Hannah. Augie uncrumpled the soggy paper. It was the very same flyer Donica had pulled off the bulletin board the day before. The wind had snatched it off her bed and carried it down the street, where it had become snagged in the bush. "Yuppers, this is it all right. See? It says 3 p.m. at the Wauwatosa bandshell. That's exactly what he told me." He held the paper out for the others to see. Dawn and Hannah's mouths fell open. "Hidden talents!" they exclaimed in unison. "What's that?" asked Augie. "It's only the hottest show on TV right now," Dawn explained. "Everybody watches it," Hannah added. "Everybody but Augie." He'd never even heard of Hidden Talents, which was not all that surprising, considering that the Cooters didn't own a television set. Mr. and Mrs. Cooter firmly believed that microwave ovens, hairspray, diet soda, and television were all very bad for your brain cells, so they didn't allow any of those things in their home. "Donica's not missing," said Hannah, looking carefully at the flyer. "She's not?" asked Dawn. "No," Hannah said, "and she's not sick either." "Then where is she?" asked Augie. "She's auditioning," said Hannah. "Why didn't she tell us about the audition?" Dawn sounded hurt. "Probably because she was afraid we might beat her," said Hannah. "What time is it anyway?" Augie looked at his watch. 3:10. The front door opened, and Mrs. Perfecto came rushing out of the house with her car keys in her hand. "I've got to go look for my cupcake," she cried. "We've got a pretty good idea about where she is," Dawn told her. "You do? Oh, thank goodness!" Mrs. Perfecto put her hand over her heart. She opened the side door of the SUV. "Jump in. You can help me find her. Oh, I hope she's all right." "She may not be once I get my hands on her," muttered Dawn as she and Hannah climbed into the car. Augie wasn't sure if he was invited too, but Turk, who loved nothing better than a ride in the car, bounded into the back seat, dragging Augie along with him. 5 minutes later, Mrs. Perfecto was turning into the parking lot of the band shell. "Are you sure this is where she is?" she asked. Augie looked across the lawn at the small crowd gathered in front of the stage. "There she is," he said, pointing at a figure in pink corduroy overalls, standing on the side of the stage, pacing nervously. "Cupcake!" cried Mrs. Perfecto. "What's she holding?" asked Hannah, squinting at Donica as she tried to make out what was in her hand. "Looks like a book," said Dawn, "or maybe a CD." But Augie shook his head. He knew exactly what it was. "Cheese," he told them all.